Laura joins us here in the studio. Great to see you.
Hey, Mark.
The French government continues to face pressure to come up with realistic plans to rein in its public deficit. What a challenge.
Well, Mark, Prime Minister Michel Barnier has to finalise next year's budget bill and submit it to lawmakers by mid-October at the very latest. Speaking before Parliament's Finance Committee, the new Budget Minister Laurent Saint-Martin said the hole in public finances was even worse than expected only a few days ago, warning that this year's budget deficit could exceed 6% of GDP, far above the initial target of 5.1% and double the EU's limit. He said the government would prioritise spending cuts before considering tax hikes. Let's take a listen.
My theory is that we won't turn around our public finances by reducing public spending on the one hand and using taxation methods on the other. It won't work. We'll get back on track by, first and foremost, reducing our spending. We're already one of the countries in Europe that taxes the most, so it would be irresponsible and unfair to ask for more.
The government still not announcing detailed plans to bring its deficit down. The Prime Minister has also been speaking with Labour Union and business leaders.
Well, companies, of course, want to keep President Macron's pro-business environment as untouched as possible. The head of France's largest employers' federation, MEDEF, says he's not opposed to tax hikes, but that they need to be extremely targeted and exceptional. Bettina Orlopp and our colleagues at France Télévisions have this.
40 billion euros. That's how much the French government has to find to reduce its public deficit. The arm wrestle has begun between Michel Barnier, who wants to bring money back into the state's coffers, and Patrick Martin, head of the employer federation MEDEF. Here in Seine-Saint-Denis, this head of building and civil engineering isn't opposed to contributing more. His company has 400 employees, of whom 10% are paid around the minimum wage. He's concerned about the employer's share of social security contributions increasing on low-income earners, as they were previously low.
It was advantageous to hire more and make the cost of work cheaper. But if it changes, bosses will hire less and our costs will rise.
Large groups are also fearing hikes to their tax contributions. Options the government is considering are a reduction in tax credits for research and development and a tax on share buybacks. But the most concerning for companies is an increase in corporation tax. The president of MEDEF has met with the country's new prime minister, outlining his conditions for a rise in corporate contributions.
If done in an extremely targeted, temporary and exceptional way, we could consider this as a last resort.
The rise in corporation tax would be a first under President Macron's presidency, as those rates have been lowered since 2017.
So next, Google's been accused of monopoly by regulators in the US and Europe. But now the tech giant is seeking action on its rivals' anti-competitive behaviour.
Yeah, this time it's tech giant versus another tech giant. Google lodged a formal complaint with the European Commission against Microsoft, accusing it of forcing its customers to use its cloud platform Azure over its rivals. According to the complaint, Microsoft changed its licensing terms in 2019 to impose hefty penalties on businesses that want to use Windows Server software on rival services like Google Cloud. It also argues that locking in users to a single platform brings higher security risks. Microsoft settled a similar complaint raised by smaller cloud providers back in July, but the deal didn't include its biggest rivals, Google Cloud and Amazon Web Services.
Next, Germany's Commerzbank is bringing forward a planned management shake-up as it faces the threat of a takeover by an Italian rival.
The Commerzbank says that its chief financial officer, Bettina Orlopp, will take over as CEO from current leader Manfred Knops at the end of the month, more than a year earlier than previously planned. This comes as Germany's second largest lender is seeking to fend off a hostile takeover by UniCredit. Brian Quinn has more.
Bid for a rare cross-border takeover raises fears of job cuts. Commerzbank employees gathered outside company headquarters in Frankfurt Tuesday, vowing to fight a hostile acquisition bid by Italy's UniCredit.
We've had years of restructuring programs. The last one meant 10,000 job cuts. That was hard. But now we are making good money again, and we have a strategy for continued profitability. As a thank you, the employees must now once again fear for their jobs.
UniCredit has revealed increasing stakes in Commerzbank over recent weeks via stock purchases and derivatives contracts as it seeks regulatory approval for a nearly 30% stake. Commerzbank is Germany's second largest lender, with more than 42,000 employees and 25,000 business customers. It accounts for nearly a third of German foreign trade transactions. The bank's board and the German government, which owns 12% of Commerzbank, have both voiced strong opposition to a takeover. But Berlin has little legal power to prevent the acquisition, as banking mergers in the EU are regulated by the European Central Bank rather than national governments. The ECB wants more cross-border mergers to help European banks compete with global rivals. Some analysts say a takeover could be good for the continent's overall financial health.
It would create larger European unities, and that would mean larger banks, potentially more stability, more business opportunities.
Germany, though, fears that having Commerzbank's direction in a foreign country will mean less financing for German small and medium-sized companies, especially in times of financial stress or crisis.
The Commerzbank crisis. Next, the global economy is starting to turn the corner after a period of high inflation. The OECD sees growth stabilising this year. Good news then.
Yeah, well, yes, the group has released an updated version of its outlook, projecting the global economy to grow 3.2% this year. The OECD cited relatively robust growth in the US and some other G20 members, but lowered its projections for Japan and Argentina, expecting these two economies to contract this year. Still struggling to shake off the impact of the energy crisis, the Eurozone's growth is set to remain weak, particularly its largest member, Germany. Meanwhile, the growth prospect for the UK has been sharply upgraded. The OECD also called on governments to do more to rein in spending and boost tax revenues to reduce debt.
Inflation is now at or close to central banks' targets in around 80% of OECD economies. That is a massive improvement from early last year. We need to do more to better control expenditures, or growth in expenditures, improving spending efficiency, reallocate spending to areas that better support opportunities and growth, and to optimize tax revenues.
Well, it rings true the budgetary situation that France is facing currently, doesn't it? So.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Steve.